Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's WorkSafe Tasmania Month webinar, Cost-Effective Wellness Solutions for Small Business. I'm Stephanie from WorkSafe Tasmania and also the coordinator of WorkSafe Tasmania Month. I'll also be your moderator for this afternoon's webinar. Before we get started though, I'd appreciate you taking a few moments to read the following slide about information delivered during WorkSafe Month sessions. I'd now like to go over a few items so that you know how you can participate in this afternoon's webinar. So we've taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your computer screen in the upper right corner. You're most likely listening in using your computer's speaker system by default. However, if you'd prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will also have the opportunity throughout the webinar to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. As I said, you may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these questions and address them most likely at the end of the presentation. We are also recording webinars that we run during WorkSafe Tasmania Month and will progressively make them available on the WorkSafe site. So do have a look out for those. Also, we do ask that you stay on your computer screen after the webinar and complete a short survey on the presentation. We'd certainly appreciate you telling us about your webinar experience and also about this afternoon's presentation. So it is now my pleasure to hand you over to Katrina Walton from Wellness Designs to run this afternoon's webinar, Cost-Effective Wellness Solutions for Small Business. Welcome, Katrina.
Great, and thank you very much, Stephanie, and welcome everyone. So, as I guess I'm assuming you're all here this afternoon because you're wanting a healthy, safe, engaged, resilient, and high-performing team, and this may include you as a business owner as well. And if so, you're certainly in the right place. And I guess as business owners or those working within small business, many of you are probably grappling with how to really boost the productivity of your team, how to create a safe workplace and ensure your employees are fit for work both physically and mentally, and also most critically how to attract and retain the right people to your organisation and ultimately position your organisation as a great place to work. And the good news is that investing in the health and wellness of your greatest asset, your people, can support you in achieving these goals. And ultimately, this is going to enable you to reduce the cost of absenteeism and workers' compensation costs and injury rates within your organisation. It's going to help you to maintain a safe and healthy workforce, and it's also going to help you to improve staff morale, engagement, and ultimately organisational performance. However, in saying that, many of you may perceive workplace wellness as a nice to have or a bit of fluff. And whereas national and international research suggests a $3 to $5 return for every dollar invested in employee wellbeing. However, despite this, I still see organisations spending millions of dollars maintaining their equipment to ensure it doesn't break down, but fail to see still the importance of investing in their human capital. And this is why particularly I'm very passionate about supporting organisations, particularly small to medium business, to really bring out the best in their people and ultimately their bottom line. But even so, as a small business owner, to be really frank, you've probably got an overextended budget, you've probably got a long to-do list and probably having a lack of in-house expertise to run such health and wellness strategies within your organisation. And you might still not be convinced that investing in employee wellbeing is critical or viable for your business. And I mean, you're not alone that way, and certainly small businesses across Australia are facing the same challenge, and they don't believe they can afford a strategy or have the time or feel they have the time to piece a strategy together. But the good news is that you can still reap the benefits of a workplace wellness strategy without a big end of town budget. And in fact, there's never been a better time for you to future-proof your business. So as way of brief background, I've worked or had the benefit of working in the workplace wellness industry for the past 20 years, delivering multi-award winning programs both nationally and internationally across not only a range of industries but also a range of sizes of organisations. And a large part of this has been involved in-house delivering and managing such programs. So I guess what that gives me is a really good understanding on the ground of some of the challenges inherent in developing such strategies, but I guess also relevant to today's discussion, being a small business myself and being married to a small business owner, I feel like also can bring and have a good understanding of some of the challenges in the day-to-day, of running a business of that nature. So today's session is really going to look at the what, why and how of why you should be investing in health and wellness for your business. And I guess most critically, our top 10 tips, and hopefully very practical ones, that you can take away and implement straight away in your business. So firstly, I guess just a bit of a snapshot of small business in Australia, and some of these stats I'm sure you're aware of already, but it does form 96% of all businesses in Australia, of which 46% of the private sector as well. And linked to that, 70% of all businesses within Australia, also family-based businesses as well. Now, for some of the reasons we've already touched on, small to medium businesses are also less likely to offer wellness programs. So given they form 96% of all businesses within Australia, that's obviously a big percentage of employees in Australia that don't have access or benefit from such initiatives. There was an Australian study that was done recently of small business, and they found that 24% of business owners of small business are working 51 plus hours per week. And I guess there's further insight into some of the challenges of running a small business. There was a study that was done by Officeworks for small businesses this year, a wellbeing index, and they found that 45% of business owners this year were feeling more stressed this year than in the 12 months prior. And what was interesting furthermore about this study is they found that 70% of owners that were from rural areas rated themselves as being more happy and fulfilled compared to those that were living within more the metro areas that were probably more, those in the rat race, so to speak. And this is just a quote that was taken from that study saying, I've always wanted to start my own business as I wanted more flexibility and better work-life balance. And I think, often, particularly those of us that might have escaped the corporate cubicle before or have decided to embark on starting their own business, for work or life family reasons, often I think there's that perception that it's going to automatically present a lot of flexibility and greater work-life balance. And certainly there's a lot of benefits for the business owner around that, but there can also be a lot of challenges as well. So firstly, what is workplace wellness? So just to set the scene for today's discussion. So when we look at effective workplace health and wellness within an organisation, I guess there's three core areas that we look to. There's obviously the very important and core area of health and safety and some of the legislative requirements that sit around that we're required to meet. And then there's the area of managing ill health. So when an employee does unfortunately get ill or injured, how as a business you can support them back to work in a timely and supportive fashion. And then today's discussion is going to centre more, I guess, upstream. So rather than waiting downstream for the expensive treatment of disease or illness, we're going to be looking more upstream to the proactive and also more cost-effective management of health and wellness within your business. But I guess to help guide that discussion today, we're just going to conduct a quick poll. Be really interested if you were looking at your company's current commitment to supporting the health and wellness of your people, how you would rate that. So I guess where you are on that journey or readiness, so to speak, of supporting that. So it could be A, what commitment, so you've got no or very limited strategy in place currently, sort of, might be B, or you've got a few maybe ad hoc things that you've tried but there's been no real formal strategy behind it. Getting ready, you might be very conscious that there's health and wellness issues or it's something that you're really wanting to invest in and you're looking at planning a strategy in the next 6 to 12 months. Or D, you might be on your way, you've already designed a strategy and you're putting something in place for this year, but it's at that early stage. Or you might be E, where it's really part of your DNA already and the strategy is firmly implemented. So I might hand over to Stephanie, I think, who's going to conduct that poll for us now.
Yes, so the poll has been launched, so we'll give everyone a few moments to click on a response.
So this will just be very valuable in guiding some of the future discussion and questions, so thank you in advance.
Okay, so I'll now close the poll and show the results.
Okay, fantastic. So firstly, I think it's great to see that all of those that are on the call have made some effort or are in the process of embarking on a strategy. So that's terrific. And a few who even it's very firmly planted. So good to see sort of that range of readiness. And again, with some of the questions, we'll try and address those linked to that. So thank you. Okay, so when we look at why well employees equal well organisations, and when we look at, oh, sorry, I've just gone back one more. So when we look at effectively linking health, wellness and safety within the workplace, I guess the reality is we spend a third of our life at work. And there's a number of factors that impact on our well-being both inside and outside of the workplace. And certainly while work can have a very positive impact on our healthy well-being through rewarding and stimulating and challenging work and hopefully giving us some purpose to get out of bed in the morning, it can also have the very opposite effect. There's a number of work-related factors such as the demands of our working roles, the hours that we work, that can have a flow on to things such as health behaviours. So for example, we know that shift workers, very generally speaking, tend to make poorer nutritional habits and have poorer sleep hygiene habits, which can have an impact on to subsequent health outcomes, which can have a flow on to health and safety performance, as an example. And all of those things can flow on to business outcomes, whether it be lost productivity, absenteeism, etc. We also, I guess there's been a lot in the media and also in research that also shows the demands of the fly-in, fly-out lifestyle as an example, and the mental health toll that that can take not only on the individual employee, but also that it can have on the family relationships as well. Similarly, we know, looking at health outcomes, that, for example, overweight and obese employees tend to be at a higher risk for musculoskeletal injury, and when they do get injured, it tends to be more severe in nature, which again can have a flow on to the bottom line. Similarly, there's a lot of things within our personal lives as well. We don't just leave our personal lives at the door when we come to work, and things such as our lifestyle, our family situation, whether we've got a new baby in the house or, like myself, maybe have a snoring husband, so you end up a bit sleep deprived. But there's a lot of factors. You might have caring responsibilities outside of work that again can influence things such as your health behaviours and health outcomes, etc. And often we see the compound effect of that work and life connecting where, for example, you look at sedentary activity, where we're becoming increasingly sedentary not only in our personal lives but also within our working lives due to such factors as mechanisation of work, etc. And I mean, they're calling sedentary activity now the new smoking, and when you consider that, if we're sitting for 11 hours or more a day, which sounds like a lot, but when you consider maybe sitting down to have breakfast, you may be commuting for a portion into work, you're then sitting at your desk for a number of hours and then doing the commute back home, sitting down for dinner, and then maybe crashing in front of the television. You can see how very quickly that 11 hours can add up. And even if you've done your 30-minute walk that day, it actually eradicates the benefits of that. And what they show is that not only puts you at an increased risk of chronic disease, but also I think a 35% increased risk of early death as well. So you can see how some of those factors can collide. So if we move on to the next slide now, there's a number of key drivers for Australian workplaces, I guess, investing in the health and wellness of their greatest asset, which is their people. So organisations, it might be part of their corporate social responsibility strategy or as an employee benefit or about being an employer of choice as an example. And there's a large study that's done by a group called Buck Consultants each year, and they look at globally but also within Australia, what are the main reasons or drivers for Australian organisations investing in this space. And what they found is 3 of the top reasons was, number 1 was productivity. So we know that healthy employees are more productive and engaged employees. And in fact, there was an Australian research that was done a number of years ago by Medibank Private, and they found that where healthy employees were 3 times more productive and had 9 times less sick leave compared to unhealthy employees. Similarly, the second factor within this Buck study was, the second driver was safety. Because at the end of the day, it's hard to be a safe worker if you're not a healthy worker. So if your employees aren't fit for work, both mentally and physically, to perform the job required. And the third key reason for organisations that was identified in this study was around morale and engagement. And there was a recent study that was done by a group called Right Management. They determined that where health and wellbeing is managed well within organisations, that employees were 8 times more likely to be engaged with that organisation. So I think some of that comes back to that sense of feeling cared for by their employer. And some of the other key drivers that we're really seeing a lot of our clients particularly grapple with, particularly the likes of SMEs, is that Australia also is being met with the challenge of an ageing workforce. So Australia is one of the most rapidly ageing workforces in the world, and the average Australian worker is 35 years, but in a lot of industries it's a lot higher. So you look at the likes of transport and education, health and aged care as an examples, and they're generally up more in the high 40s or even into the early 50s. Now this has a whole series of implications for workplaces. It has implications from a risk management point of view, from a workability point of view, so an employee's ability to, physically and mentally perform the job required. From a transition to retirement point of view, as people are wanting to phase out of work, and linked to that often that knowledge retention and capture, is becoming a big issue for a lot of organisations. Flexible working arrangements as well. And I guess what's interesting though is particularly the baby boomer generation, or those that are over 45 years of age, are also 2.5 times more likely to stay with your organisation, which just further highlights the importance of really investing in this section of your workforce. But I think what's interesting about that is we're also seeing the rise of the so-called sandwich generation. So an ageing workforce doesn't just impact the baby boomers in your workplace, but also potentially other sectors. So I'm part of the sandwich generation, so to speak, or those that might be on the end of the line that fall into that Gen X group. So typically born between 1969 and 1980. And what we're finding is due to a variety of factors, we're living longer. Typically we're having families later and there's a lower fertility rate, and also the baby boomers are reaching 65 years and over. And what we're finding with those factors colliding is that we've got a lot of employees in that Gen X bracket that are increasingly, I guess, juggling not only childcare responsibilities but also potentially elder care responsibilities. And some of the emotional, physical and also financial strains that can place on your employees, and often a large percentage of elder care responsibilities particularly are generally borne or shouldered by women, and generally it's in their peak earning years as well. So a lot of implications again from a health and wellbeing point of view. So I guess this really begs the question of our clients when you consider a lot of those factors is, how is poor employee health and well-being really costing your organisation, and most importantly, what's the cost of doing nothing? And I guess the conundrum for small business is that compared to big business, an employee health or wellness issue can be amplified tenfold. And the smaller the business, often the greater the impact. And I guess to illustrate that, we only have to look at some of these scenarios that might be playing out within your workplace. So you might have Jennifer, who's taking an increasing amount of sick days. She's appearing withdrawn at work. Her boss suspects she might have an underlying mental health condition, but doesn't feel confident, broaching the matter with her or having that conversation. Now, you only have to consider that 1 in 2 of us are going to be grappling with a mental health issue over our lifetime, and 1 in 4 Australians are each year. So that's potentially 25% of your workforce. And when you look at the potential impact of untreated depression alone, there was a study that was actually done in the University of Queensland, and what they found is for every employee with untreated depression, it equated to close to $10,000 per annum per year in lost productivity, whether it be through things such as absenteeism or presenteeism. So certainly mental health is often one of those, I guess, underlying issues that, particularly as far as training two of your managers in how to identify and best support your employees as well. Or you might have 2 of your company's employees who have gone down with a bad case, of the flu. We've had a particularly bad flu season this year. That can be, 25% of your workforce, a significant hit again to the company's productivity. And again, I think that's something important to highlight is there's not only the direct costs of poor employee health and wellbeing, so, the case of those employees being off work and the associated absenteeism costs, but often it's the indirect costs that flow on from that as well. So, if having to get in a substitute teacher or an agency nurse to backfill that staff member that might be away, can also have flow-ons to things like, customer satisfaction and care as well. We look at one more scenario, so we've got John, whose lack of physical conditioning and poor core stability has contributed to his manual handling injury, which has bumped up the company's workers' compensation costs. And we're seeing the compound effect of things like the ageing workforce and typically high rates of chronic disease exacerbating some of these scenarios as well. Or lastly, you might have Kevin, whose chronic back problems appear to be getting worse and impacting his productivity. And his 45-minute commute and work and long hours at his desk certainly aren't helping. Plus, despite many requests, he never did get his workstation set up properly when he commenced in his role. And certainly chronic back problems are one of the major causes of what we call presenteeism, where employees are physically at work, but due to a health and medical reason, they're not performing at their optimum. And this is actually typically 4 times the cost of absenteeism. So again, it's a great example of one of those indirect costs that are not often acknowledged or measured. And migraines is another great example where it can really impact employees' productivity day to day. So I guess such examples not only lead to potential lost revenue and lost productivity and potentially additional costs such as replacement staffing and workers' compensation, but also potentially damage your relationship with customers as well. So again, it really begs that question, how much is poor health and wellness costing your organisation? And if you use that iceberg analogy, so there's a lot of things, I guess, that are above that waterline that are visible, such as things like your injury rates and costs, but really they're only the tip of the iceberg. As we've highlighted in those examples, there's a lot of things under that waterline that are more the indirect costs that can be just as damaging, if not more so. But we've also forgotten the most important asset, I think the business owner. And I think, as I mentioned at the start, having been married to a small business owner for close to 2 decades, I've seen firsthand the physical and emotional toll that running a small business can have on the individual. So certainly the long hours, inability to switch off, cash flow pressures, staffing issues, that sense of feeling really overwhelmed. And these are just some of the daily stresses, facing small business owners, let alone a vacation. What's that? So I think according to new research too, working long hours is putting business leaders at risk. And there was a study that was actually published by the medical journal, The Lancet, earlier this year, and they found that those who work 55 hours or more per week are 33% more likely to have a stroke than those that work the standard 38-hour week. And previous research has also shown that those leading and managing small to medium businesses are much more likely to work those very long hours, and as a result also at a higher risk of suffering mental health problems as well. So I think without health and wellness really as that foundation, business owners, they're not going to be able to fire on all cylinders. And some of you may have read some of the work of the late and great Stephen Covey, who was the author of the iconic book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he puts it that often we get so busy soaring, so to speak, trying to get that result, that often we forget to sharpen our saw, and I guess for this conversation really forget to nurture, our spiritual, our emotional, our physical, our intellectual well-being, to really enable us to perform at our optimum. And that doesn't have flow-ons just for the individual, it also has flow-ons to the business owner's family as well. And certainly I've seen, as the saying goes, many people will sacrifice their health to gain wealth and then spend their wealth to regain their health. And I've seen that time and time again working with a lot of, CEOs and executive groups over the years. And often it takes a major, health scare or life event for them to change path. So hopefully, as you can see, there are a number of parties that have a really vested interest in having healthy employees at work. So obviously at a government level, the fact that we do spend a lot of our time there, it's an ideal setting, and we've seen that on the back of some of the recent investment from government in that space. Obviously at an employer level, for the reasons we've already mentioned, and for the employee, I guess, through having access to on-site, convenient or accessible programs that will not only hopefully benefit themselves, but also benefit their families as well. So it really is a win-win scenario, and ultimately healthy employees, are going to equal a healthy organisation, which is going to equal, a healthier economy. So hopefully you agree it's, shouldn't be viewed anymore as a nice to have, but it really is business critical. So when we look at some of the then advantages, so the good news is there are a lot of advantages to adopting health and wellness for SMEs. And yes, you may not have a state-of-the-art gymnasium or a cafe serving fancy salads like some large organisations, but there are a lot of advantages for delivering a cost-effective strategy. And I guess firstly, most importantly, as I'm sure you're aware, it's this much less bureaucratic. Decision-making and change can happen much more quickly. Also, typically tend to have closer connections, so there's not as many barriers generally for communication internally. And often, my experience has been that they tend to have better linkages with the community as well. And I think thirdly, and most importantly, and again, speaking from my experience in being married to a small business owner where it's a family business, I think they account for 70% of all businesses, as I mentioned, but often I think they see their employees as extended family members as well. And I think the small business have the benefit of looking out for each other, and problems tend to be a bit more difficult to hide as well. So I think all of these factors lead to high levels of engagement with a health and wellness strategy, and also an ability to really build that supportive wellness culture as well, and in a lot quicker fashion. But if you're still not convinced, research from PricewaterhouseCoopers may sway you. They commissioned some research with Beyond Blue, I think it was at the end of last year, and they concluded that small business actually stand to gain the most from investing in the mental health of their employees. And what they found is that whereas the average return on investment for investing in mental health strategies within the workplace was, for every dollar invested, was a $2.30 return, for larger organisations it actually increased to as high as $15 for every dollar invested for small business. So again, the benefit of that ripple effect, within a small business setting. So what does this mean for you? So I think with these advantages and a little creativity, an affordable and simple wellness strategy will be much easier to implement than you think. So on to the how. So how do we create a wellness strategy which gets results? So the question hopefully is not now whether you implement a strategy, if you haven't already, or how you decide to further embed that, but how you go about it. And the guiding model that we tend to use is based on the World Health Organization approach. And it doesn't just focus on the individual, which I find a lot of organisations, the onus is very much still on the individual. So they'll offer things like flu vax or health checks etc., or a stress buster seminar. But what they failed to acknowledge is the different factors, the multi-determinants and factors that impact on employees' well-being, day to day, both at work and outside of work. And at a cultural level, it's important. How are things done around here? What are the norms and values of your workplace? Are they supportive or not of employee well-being? Is there a long hours working culture? Is the business owner the worst culprit? Or is there, at an environmental level, are you making those healthy choices the easy choices for your employees? Or are you serving up the same high-fat, high-sugary, morning teas at your team meetings, where maybe you could be opting for a healthier choice there? And at a policy level, how are you really integrating health and wellness into the DNA of the organisation through potentially offering things like flexible working arrangements that help your employees juggle, that day-to-day work-life balance, but also enable them to be more likely to be able to participate in anything that you run as well. So that's the framework that we tend to work by. And what Australian research shows is that where programs take that integrated approach to health and wellness within the workplace, that you're not only going to be more likely to have higher participation within your programs, but you're going to be much more likely to positively impact on health behaviours, and most importantly, much more likely to prevent chronic disease. And I have a saying that I like to use around this, that at the end of the day, massages on Mondays aren't going to work up for boring work, lousy leadership, and no career opportunities. And I guess what I mean by that is, if you're not getting to the heart of that wellness matter, if there's an underlying bullying culture, or there's other deeper issues that are at play, and you're not addressing those, it's only ever going to be seen as a band-aid effect. So if we move then onto our 6-step wellness blueprint process. So when you, I guess, looking to adopt or in the process of adopting a health and wellness strategy within your organisation, there's 6 steps that we tend to follow and adhere to. So the first step is that awakening stage. So it's really, I guess, demonstrating the business case to the business owner or the key stakeholders within your organisation, and looking at what are some of the key drivers for your organisation. So is it about being an employer of choice, or is it about getting a handle on some workplace injuries? And how could a health and wellness program potentially address those? And most critically, what's the cost of doing nothing? So it's about starting some of those conversations and looking at how a health and wellness strategy could best be approached. That next stage is the assessment stage, and that's looking at what are the needs, the priorities for your workplace, and also the interests of your employees, to ensure that where you spend your precious time, money and resources are really going to get you the best bang for that wellness buck. And that could be just as simple as sitting down with the employees at a team meeting, or a very brief survey to really get a sense of what some of those priorities are. From there, being able to design a targeted strategy that really aligns to those pain points for your organisation. And also, very importantly, as part of that, step 4, looking at an engagement strategy to not only engage the business owners and maybe other managers, but also to engage the frontline staff. So that might be appointing a coordinator to take the lead of that program, and maybe even a small committee or sort to help drive it, some volunteers. And most critically, and this is the most overlooked step, is the monitoring. So as the saying goes, you can't manage what you can't measure. So as part of that planning stage, having a very good sense of, what are the key drivers for your organisation, and I guess linked to that, what are going to be the key measures of your success for your strategy to let you know that it is getting the outcomes that you desire from that. And that can be harder indicators, such as you might look to things like your workplace injury rates, but it could also be more softer benefits, such as staff satisfaction with what you're rolling out as well. And that sustainability piece is critical. So I guess on the back of the monitoring evaluation, fine-tuning, it's that ongoing continuous improvement to really ensure that that strategy continues to meet the needs of your employees, particularly with the ebbs and flows of organisations as they change over time. So that's the 6-step process that we would normally adopt, and we would suggest a fairly logical way to go about your own strategy. So I guess now moving into more the practical part of today's webinar. So here are just our top 10 tips for cost-effective delivery for small business. So depending on where you are in your health and wellness journey, if you're just starting out or if you're a bit further along, hopefully there'll be some gold in here that you can go away and implement within your business. So firstly, as we've touched on a bit already, really determining the needs and interests of your employees, as we said, to really make sure that your efforts are being directed in the right way. And it's also about, the big part of this is also about consultation with your employees, so really feeling that they're being listened to and really ensuring that you report back then on how you're going to address some of those issues that have been identified. I can think of one example within a hospital environment. It was a small hospital, in that one of the things that came out of the needs assessment was that the staff didn't have a nice green space that they could go and have their lunch and each day. So one of the strategies that came out of it was the organisation listened to that concern, and they got the gardener to help them develop a nice green area. They bought some outdoor furniture, dressed it up with a bit of nice planting around, and relatively a low-cost strategy, but the feedback that they had from staff, not only had they listened to them, but they really felt cared for and appreciated by investing in something as simple as having the opportunity to go out and get a bit of fresh air at lunch and a nice space to do that. Number 2, nominating an employee to champion the strategy. So again, this doesn't have to be Jill, the gym junkie. If anything, it's probably better it's not. It might be John, who is, got a great rapport with his colleagues. He's very well respected amongst his colleagues, and he's got that real ability to motivate and encourage and be a good peer support again. So ideally, this would be formalised as part of that person's role as well, where they are given a dedicated amount of hours, whether it be on a weekly or monthly basis, to lead that and really make that a success. And again, they might be supported, as I said, by some volunteers as well. Also, look for opportunities to modify or extend any existing policies that you've already got in place to really demonstrate your commitment to employee health and wellbeing as well. So if you haven't already, or if you've got a basic policy around things like flexible working, you might want to extend that to include more opportunities for employees to maybe participate in different activities. For example, maybe having a longer lunch so they can head out for a walk with their colleagues at lunch, where they might work back a bit later, of an afternoon. Or maybe as part of a reward and recognition strategy, instead of having, the normal boozy Christmas lunch with the boys, you might decide to have, maybe more a family picnic, or maybe barefoot bowls or something with a bit more of a wellness flavour to that. So they're just some very simple examples. Or things like, if you have vending machines already within your organisation, you might look for healthier vending options there that, again, provide healthier choices on a day-to-day basis. Also, looking to extend to family members where possible, often for not much additional time or cost. You can extend invitation to spouses or children as well to get involved in any initiatives that you run. And often it might be the partner that's a significant health decision maker too within that household. I know of one organisation, they had arranged for a dietitian to do a grocery shopping tour, where again the spouses were also able to come along. So it was a nice sort of family activity and outing as part of that. I know of another small business who I think they were about 16 employees, and one of their key staff members, their office manager, had gone off on maternity leave to have their second child. But when they were due to come back, it was obvious that they weren't coping, and they'd had quite a difficult pregnancy, and they had a baby that probably wasn't as settling as well as they'd hoped, and they were under a bit of pressure to come back to work because they were the main breadwinner. So what the business owner did in this instance, in consultation with them and with their agreement, they funded a private midwife to go around and really work with this employee but also their family on how to adjust, to their new family situation, put some real practical strategies in place, which benefited the whole family, and they were able to then return to work. Another example with that same business where they had an employee who had gone through a bit of financial hardship, had a messy divorce, and it was clear that they were lacking in financial literacy and were living very much, week to week with their pay. So again, with the employee's permission, they put them in touch with a financial planner who was able to help them put in place some basic, budgeting mechanisms, some debt management strategies, and was able to turn their whole financial situation around and really empower them in that way, which also had flow-on benefits to their family as well. So they're just some very simple, I guess, some cost-effective examples as well on a case-by-case basis. And number 5, tapping into free or low-cost community resources. Again, you can be very creative in this way. I mean, you have the likes of larger groups like Quitline, but a lot of the local councils, again, I know within my state, within Queensland, offer a lot of things like Active and Healthy, where they have free, things within the park like yoga classes and boot camps. And I know groups like the Heart Foundation run things like walking groups. There's things like the Get Healthy telephonic coaching line, which has allied health professionals at the end of those lines that can provide nutrition advice and advice around things like exercise, etc. There's groups like the Cancer Council that provide some great resources again for workplaces, groups like Are You OK Day, Heads Up. So there's a real wealth of resources that you can tap into, and also look into your immediate community as well that can help you piece together, again, a very comprehensive strategy. But again, that's going to be guided by the needs that you've identified in the first instance. Number 6 is looking also to collaborate with other local businesses and organise activities or discounts on services. So maybe again having a conversation with your local gymnasium or fruit shop, or potentially even getting together with other small businesses that may be in a close geographical facility and pooling your resources to offer some initiatives together. So I've seen that again work extremely well. Similarly, you might look to partner with a larger business that has an established program. Approach them, ask them, see if they'd be happy to extend maybe to subsidised rates on the things that they're already providing for their staff. And again, I've seen some great models of that working really well. Again, look for opportunities to integrate health and wellness into things you're already doing, into existing company initiatives or day-to-day activities. So this could be things like your toolbox talks, as an example. So looking at threading through, health and wellness messaging into the day-to-day meetings. I know, I think it's Healthier WA offers some great video toolbox talks that you could even show on things like your iPads for team members. Also, reward and recognition we mentioned as well. So again, maybe rather than the bottle of wine or other cash incentives, maybe look for more health and wellness related rewards that you could provide. Also looking at implementing things maybe like standing meetings or walking meetings. So rather than your normal sit-down meeting, instead holding a standing meeting. I don't know about yourself, but I find firstly you get through the meeting a lot quicker, but often I think you tend to think better on your feet as well, and it tends to get the creative juices flowing also. Number 9, create a supportive wellness environment. So again, looking at making those healthy choices, the easy choices for your employees. So we gave that simple example before, offering healthier catering options for things like team meetings or social events. Or maybe if you are looking to refurb your office, maybe engaging a specialist ergonomist or other design specialist who could assist you in providing a space where it's more activity-based, where employees can move and collaborate more over the day. And finally, number 10, subsidise activities or programs as well. So I think it's very important, if you're not already, that employees do contribute you know, as far as I think it needs to be very much a sense of shared responsibility in anything that you run. So whether employees provide their time or they may even contribute in a monetary way to things that you run. But the organisation may choose, for example, to subsidise maybe a local fun run where they might pay half the registration fee or may provide, you know, a t-shirt, a water bottle or things. And that might again also be a nice one to extend to family members. Or you might provide, you know, fruit on site, but it might be on a pay-as-you-go basis. And I know there's some examples of Tasmanian workplaces that have implemented that and it's worked well. I think charity is also a great big driver, I find, as an incentive for a lot of companies where the organisation may contribute or match dollar per dollar where employees are raising money, you know, for a walk or a run. So there again, some other great ways to motivate and encourage your staff to get involved. I'd just like now to play a quick case study. So this is actually a Queensland company called Noja Power. They're a medium-sized business. I think they're about 130 employees, and they have their very passionate CEO, Neil. So the wellness program was his brainchild, but I thought whilst it's a slightly larger organisation, maybe to some that are on the call today, I thought it's just to highlight some of the key points that we've spoken about today, particularly around things like the healthy environmental policy. And I think Neil, again, is a great advocate as being a very passionate leader and walking the talk. So I'll just play that now. Oops, sorry, or Stephanie will. Thank you, Stephanie.
Hi, welcome to Noja Power. My name's Ashley Smith. I'm a production engineer here.
Noja Power manufacture electrical switchgear. We export our product to 80 countries around the world. And
we're a Queensland trailblazer for wellness. So the health and wellbeing program that we're running at the moment and have done for the second year now is one of Neil's initiatives. A few Christmases ago, I was sitting on a balcony thinking about how can we create a better workforce, how can we create a better environment for our employees, how can we attract our employees to stay with us. And so I decided that one of the things we should be doing is our health and wellbeing program. And in particular, it started with a health check. I'm going to show you some of these things after I've had a shower. Okay, the tour starts now. As you can see, we've got shower and lockers to support us to be active. In summertime, cycling to work is pretty full on. You're pretty sweaty when you get here, and have a cool down and shower and somewhere to put your gear is very important. So since we started encouraging people to think about their health, there's been a bit of a spike in the number of bicycles on the racks, and they're coming a bit late some mornings. It's a bit difficult to find something in there. This is obviously our lunchroom. It's been upgraded recently to incorporate places to keep our food hot, places to keep our food cold, so we can easily bring prepared meals from home. We've also got our fruit bowl. We encourage our employees to eat fruit, in that we provide 2 pieces of fruit for every employee every day.
So at 2 or 3 o'clock, instead of craving for a chocolate bar, we then go and get an apple or pear instead. My favourite initiative is probably the fruit bowl. Every day I do take a piece of fruit, and it's really, really nice. And also the seminars.
Noja Power puts on several seminars and workshops throughout the year, and here's one now.
First thing in the morning, get it out of the way, then it runs. You get to hear the things you should and shouldn't do, and
Can't do without.
Particularly in the seminar about reading labels and things, you know, that was a real eye-opener for me. I learned to, yes, read the label parts because I have no idea.
Oh, sorry.
When I go to the grocery store and I just pick up the label and what do I do here? Caution to health was a big thing that I've taken away from the program. That was something that I learned at the seminar.
We sponsor a range of extracurricular activities, in particular Bridge to Brisbane during training. Bridge to Brisbane is something that I'm quite proud of.
Smoking, but this year we are
our staff to do, and we have two teams, and we have a race against each other. Normally the boat that I'm in.
Measure Power offers free vaccinations and health checks here if you want.
Wesley Health been providing us with the services. They provide the staff to do the medical checks. They provide the vaccinations every year.
It's a good program because sometimes people won't take the time to go and see the doctor just because we're too busy.
I think the annual health checks will ultimately save lives. During the health checks for 2013, it was about 5 to 10% of our employees were referred on to medical specialists for potential areas where they could address.
I did a health check.
Okay, so I'm hoping everyone could hear that towards the end. I know I lost volume, so I might just recap as far as what the three, I feel anyway, were takeaway messages from that. I think what Nojo Power have done very well is they've adopted an integrated approach around those 4 pillars that we mentioned earlier at an individual, culture, environment and policy level. Secondly, you're seeing the power of that strong leadership support and really nurturing and building that wellness culture within that organisation. And I think thirdly, you would have seen that they've really measured and had some real benefits as far as performance to the organisation, which were shown on that slide. And I guess the important point to highlight on that as well is that it's not going to happen overnight. And yes, you are going to see some immediate benefits from investing and rolling out a health and wellness strategy. Within a 12-month period, you're going to see improvements in things like morale and engagement, etc. But as far as impacting some of your harder outcomes, as far as things like safe injuries, it can sometimes take a longer, or a 3 to 5 year window. But as we said, for smaller business, the good news is that can be much quicker in building that culture within the organisation. So hopefully, as far as wrap up, hopefully what today has highlighted is that when you put the right thing with the smart thing, it's really going to equal the wise thing for your organisation, and how adopting a strategic approach as opposed to an ad hoc or piecemeal one, it really is going to result in a win-win for both your employees and your organisation. Some further reading for those that might be interested. There's a couple of books there that I would highly recommend, particularly for business owners, called Dr. Adam Fraser is an Australian author and speaker who's written a book on the third space. So it's about basically transitioning or managing the transitions between work and life particularly. A great read. And Gail Boyson as well, who has a book called All Together Now, and it's about how those three pillars, vision, leadership and wellness, are mutually reinforcing. So for example, you can be a very visionary leader with strong leadership skills, but if you haven't got health and wellness as a foundation, it's not going to be sustainable, and vice versa. Similarly, there's some website links there that again have resources dedicated to small to medium business, and obviously the WorkSafe Tasmania and some of the great resources and support available through the likes of Cameron Blight and the advisors as well. And the Workplace Health Promotion Network, if you're not already, would really encourage you to join. They have got special pricing for small to medium business, but a great opportunity for you to network with other companies, like-minded companies who are also investing in this area. Also, for those that are interested in learning more or have enjoyed today's webinar, just to highlight that we are running another series of webinars with my associate Joe Kidney called Healthy, Safe, Productive, and it's about really educating and empowering small to medium business about the benefits of an integrated approach to health and safety, and that's the website link there, healthysafeproductive.com.au, and these are just the topics that are coming up in the next 6 months. So we've got 2 breakfast forums. The first one is next Thursday, What's Keeping You Up at Night. That one will be in Brisbane, and also Making the Right Choices, the Easy Choices will be a breakfast in Brisbane, but the other 2 will be run as webinars for those that are interested in dialing in. So I guess that's it as far as the formal session, and I guess, Stephanie, we've got about 5 minutes left. Sorry, I've run a little bit over, just for any questions that anyone might have.
Okay. Yeah, as Katrina said, and thank you very much, Katrina, for your webinar this afternoon, Cost-Effective Wellness Solutions for Small Business. There is time if anyone has any questions that they would like to submit. Katrina, just in regards to the video that we played during the webinar, if anyone did want to watch that again, you're happy for me to provide the YouTube link to anyone?
Yes, of course, it's publicly available. No, that's fine, no problem.
So just while any questions are coming through, I'll just run through what else is happening during WorkSafe Tasmania month. So we are continuing with webinars again this week and over the next couple of weeks. Do also look out for our live feed sessions running at the University of Tasmania, both at the Sandiga Bay campus and the Nune campus. Again, have a look at the program of events which you can access online at the worksafe.tas.gov.au website. A question that has come through, Katrina. We have biscuits and cakes at work. I can't convince my management to change.
Yes, sometimes too is there, I guess, an opportunity in the first instance to provide a healthier option, alongside. So, and sometimes it is hard for those that may, I guess if there's a cultural tradition of having that type of food, it's maybe introducing a healthier option in the first instance to try. And often you'll find that tends to be the one that's opted for, which can often then change, I guess, the offerings in itself. And maybe having a discussion with the business owner as to maybe having a healthier catering policy or more formal discussion around that. I know some organisations go to the extent of even having a healthy fundraising, policy where they won't allow the likes of the fundraising chocolates or that in. It can only be the healthier options that are available. But it can be a tough one to break, particularly if it's an influential person within the business. But I guess it's in the first instance just providing the choice for those that want it.
All right, thank you for that, Katrina. And no further questions have come through. So again, thank you, Katrina from Wellness Designs for presenting this afternoon's webinar, Cost-Effective Wellness Solutions for Small Business. And thank you as well to everyone who has attended this afternoon's webinar too. Again, once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and we certainly appreciate you completing that survey, providing us with your feedback about your webinar experience and about the presentation as well. So on behalf of WorkSafe Tasmania and our presenters, thank you for joining us today, and have a great, safe and healthy rest of the day. Thank you.